Welcome back to Man vs. Meeple, the show where we talk about all things board game related. Today we are bringing you a preview of Monsterlands, a game that was formerly known as M-Lands, one that we did a first look with, and a game that we've had in our possession for about 6 months now.
It's been a while. I think it's undergone some changes since we first played it. We've played it again a couple times, but yeah, it's really come along.
This is a die manipulation worker placement style game for 1 to 4 players and takes about 2 hours to play. It's got beautiful artwork. It looks absolutely stunning, but don't let that fool you. This is a heavier worker placement style game that's hidden beneath this beautiful facade.
Yeah, this game at first glance definitely looks like sort of a family-friendly, playful game, and we love that type of style. But there is a lot going on with Monsterlands.
Yeah, and the great thing about the game, too, is it's incredibly scalable. You can play as a solo player. You can play from 2 to 4 players, but it also comes in 4 different difficulty levels. So you can skew the game depending upon the age range that you're playing with. And not only that, but there is a Trickster Mode in the game that allows traps that are interactive with other players. So you can play the game with traps that particularly target other players in the game, or you can leave them out completely.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic for people that are just wanting to play kind of a worker placement, standalone, build your own type of thing.
Yeah, it's definitely a nice way to give people that choice, for sure, because a lot of people, as you know, don't always like that level of interaction, but it's there if you want it.
So what's going on? The Queen has sent out a plea basically for mercenaries to come and save her land from monsters. And what you're doing is you're building up your own clan or tribe. You have a leader that will lead all the other clansmen. Each of these clansmen will have unique abilities to them and provide you with one of 3 very specific type of dice in the game. These dice are red, purple, and yellow, all of them providing very unique benefits and ways to manipulate and use them within the course of the game.
Right, the dice are going to be doing a number of different things. You can use them. A lot of those options overlap.
Yeah.
Some favor certain types of dice over others, but usually it gives you the option to use some of the lesser dice there too.
Yeah. Each player will start with 1 particular mercenary and 1 particular leader. These things will have an affinity. There's 4 different types of affinities in the game. There's like green and red, which are fire and water.
The
and
basic
land,
elements.
Your basic elements. On these particular cards, you have dice that they provide for the player. So at the start of the game, each player will start with 4 dice. 2 contributed by their leader, 1 contributed by their starting mercenary, and then 1 depending upon where they are on the track. It's called the glory track on their player board. Now, it's very important to understand the player boards themselves. When you look at this player board, you have 3 rows. Each of ththese rows have a number. The goal in the game is to get as much glory as you can, which is represented by your blue star, which will start at 5. That's kind of the glory that your leader has brought to your clan. The whole goal is to try to raise that glory level by going out to the outer world and killing and capturing monsters and bringing them back to the Queen. Now, all the while, you have a secondary token that will be tracking behind your glory token called your reputation. These are what your mercenaries will be providing to your clan. Now, the trick here is that the reputation, which is the red, can never bypass the glory that you have. You're also going to notice that on each of these rows, you have a number of dollars that you have to spend for the mercenaries at the end of the round. So the higher your glory, the more you're going to have to spend for those mercenaries, which is very cool. And across the bottom, you have all the storage areas. You can have a limited number of storage for each of the different types of tokens within the game. Also, you have benefits. Depending upon where your glory stacks on these rows, you can get additional dice to be able to use through the course of the game. The game is all about trying to get as many dice and using those in a variety of different ways.
Right, and that reputation and glory dynamic that exists is really interesting because it forces the player to basically vary their actions. You know, at a certain point, you're going to find, oh, wait a minute, I need more reputation, but I can't do it, so then you have to go out and do things that are going to bring your clan or your tribe glory so that you can increase that distance and then thereby move your reputation up a little bit more too.
Each of the different mercenaries in the game have their own token. These tokens will be used to go out to the outer world in order to mark that those particular leaders are out in particular areas battling monsters. Let's talk about all these components because there's a lot of them here. You're going to notice the main player board. on the player board, there's two distinct, or game board, there's two very distinct locations you need to know. One is the Citadel. It kind of wraps in this bottom left corner. These are the worker placement locations that are safe. You can go to these locations and acquire different things through the course of the game. On the outer world, which are your green and your brown sections, these are lands in which have monsters that will inhabit them, and they have missions that you can go to try to use your dice to either capture those monsters, kill those monsters, or complete those missions, all of which will give you glory and unique benefits through the course of the game.
Exactly. These are the basic two main areas. Now, throughout the game, you might acquire more clansmen or other cards in the game that are going to allow you other places to actually go with your dice. But for the most part, you're going to start with the Citadel, because the Citadel is where you're going to sort of build things up, build your forces, and then once you have the guts to do so, go out to the outer world and really try to kill some of those monsters, or completely go a different route and take on some quests.
Yeah. Let's talk about the phases of the game, and as we talk through the phases of the game, we're going to talk about the different locations and where you can go. So the very first thing you do, everybody at the table is going to pool all the dice that they have according to the leaders and the mercenaries that they have. Again, we spoke about this briefly. My leader provides me a yellow and a red. My mercenary provides me a purple, and then I'm on the first row, which is another red. The only die you're going to roll at the start of the turn, everybody's going to roll their yellow die immediately, and they're going to keep that in front of them. The other die facings don't matter for right now.
Right.
They're simply going to place them. These are your dice to be able to use during the second phase, which is basically the worker phase. Now, the worker phase, you can go to a variety of different areas on the board. We're going to talk first about the Citadel, because these are the easier locations to understand, and it's where you're going to be acquiring gear to kind of level up your characters.
Indeed. So the easiest place, we'll start over here on the right. This is where you're going to go and acquire money. There's a couple different places to acquire money, but this is sort of the mines where you're going to acquire the most. It has 4 different locations here. When you go to a place and on your turn take your action, you're going to put whatever number of dice that are required by the spot. So you can see to get 6 money, you have to place 2 dice. They have to be red dice though. So this is where you're going to use red die to get money. If you don't have red die, you're not getting money from the mine.
And the great thing here is the facings don't matter. For your red and your purple die in the Citadel, it doesn't matter what die facings you have, because you're not rolling those.
Yeah, they're effectively red and purple cubes.
Yeah.
In this case. So the next place over here is where you can buy equipment. Simply, you're going to go here. There's 3 spaces to go in a 3+ player game, and you place a yellow or a red die here. This is going to allow you to pick up one of the 3 face-up pieces of equipment here in the equipment lineup. There are prices in the upper left-hand corner of these. The equipment is going to be things that you can add to your tableau, and again, it's going to give you some sort of ongoing benefit. It's going to allow you to manipulate some of your die in different stages of the game.
Yeah, one of the things about the equipment is that they are slotted into the bottom of a mercenary. There's different types of equipment. So, for instance, there's armor. You can only have 1 piece of armor per mercenary that you have. The other really cool thing about all the cards in the game, and I want to make a note of this as well, there are icons here that show you whether or not that card can be used in the Citadel for its special ability or in the outer world.
Right.
Anytime you see the symbol, it tells you that this ability is only used when you're in combat, which is really great, and it doesn't require you to go flipping through the book constantly to figure out, oh, where does this ability get used?
Yeah, they've done, Jeremy and I talk about this a lot. The more information you can have out on the table, the better, and they've done a good job, particularly with the equipment in this respect. So the next spot you can go to, this is sort of that catch-all spot where you can't really think of anywhere else to go. So you're going to go there with a yellow or a purple or a red die, and you're going to collect $1.
Yeah.
And then the last spot here that I'm going to talk about is a place where you can get shields. Now, we'll probably go into a little bit more detail on the shields when we get to combat, but you're going to basically collect these shields. You can spend money basically by going here with $2, $4, or $6 to get 1, 2, or 3 shields. These are going to be used when you go into combat to sort of help defend yourself, obviously, against some of the monster attacks.
The bottom right, or bottom left, is the Tavern. This is where you're going to go hire new mercenaries. There's always 4 mercenaries available, so if someone goes there and buys one, it's immediately going to get replenished. There's also some random or similar mercenaries. These are all novices. You can buy these at any time as well. The trick about novices is that they don't have a token for them, so they can never be used in the outer world to go combat monsters. But they do have the ability of giving you a free red die and then changing dice on your turn, because they have their own little worker placement spot on them. Now, I want to talk about yellow dice as I'm talking about this, because this is a very important portion of the game. One of the spots here was the equipment. We have the mercenaries, and then up here we have the traps. Each of these can use yellow dice. As I said at the very beginning, at the start of the round, you have to roll your yellow dice. This is a really cool portion of the game. These are called Persuasion Dice, and you can look around the table and see who has yellow dice and what numbers they have, or what pips they have facing up. These are very, very special dice that can be used in the Citadel to give you discounts for buying very specific things, either equipment, mercenaries, or traps within the game. The pip that you use is the discount that you initially get. So if I wish to go to this area and buy this mercenary, it would cost me $1 because you have a minimum of $1.
Right.
4 minus 4 is $1. Now the cool thing is, anyone that follows you with Persuasion Dice, if that number is lower than the number you previously used, for instance, if someone used a 3 after my 4, they have a $7 discount because you add the two together.
Yeah, you're always going to get the previous Persuasion Dice plus your Persuasion Dice if you use it. So later in the game, we only have 4s out right now, but later in the game, there are very expensive clansmen that come out, and you can sometimes get some of those for $1 when they would have normally cost 8.
Yeah, Persuasion Dice are very powerful, they're very cool, and they're going to be used quite a bit, so you want to try to collect those early. This spot here, the purple die is the only, this is the only spot in the game where you can actually collect potions and venoms. Potions are used to heal your mercenaries, and venoms are used to add additional attacks in combat when you're locked in combat with the monsters. And then finally, when you have the traps, these traps are going to be used when you're going to these different lanes in the outer world, preparing to fight one of the monsters. These provide you with additional dice. They could hurt your opponents if you're playing with the trickster
these can
traps.
be some nasty little things.
Yeah, they're hidden, so when you buy them, players know what you're buying, but then you place it face down, so they don't know which of the traps you wish to use. Again, this can use Persuasion Dice, and you can buy as many of these as you wish. Placing one die there doesn't lock you into buying just one. If you have enough money, you can buy all of them, and then they're immediately replenished. But you do have a limit of holding 5 traps at any given time. So those are the 7 worker placement spots in the Citadel. You can also choose to, if you so wish, place in one of 2 different lanes. I'm going to let David talk about the missions first, because these are the easier of the 2 to talk about.
Yeah, the missions are sort of like the quests, the adventures that you'd go on in the outer lands. There's no monsters to fight, but it doesn't mean that it's not competitive.
Yeah.
So you're going to go out here and you're going to place in one of these. There's 2 adventures or quests that you can go on at any given point. You're going to place one of your tokens with one of either your leader or someone from your clan. And then you're going to place whatever die you can, depending on what the adventure says. So for instance, this adventure here suggests that you have to have 1 die that's either yellow or purple.
Yep.
So I can do that. The trick here is, Jeremy then on his turn can go to that same place and go there with a purple or a yellow die. And then once we resolve that later in the game, we're going to roll those die. We have to get at least the target value that's on the quest to achieve that quest, but the person who's going to achieve it is the person who rolls higher.
Yeah.
So it is a competitive situation. You don't have to get into a competitive situation, but you can.
Yeah, and if there is a tie on those die rolls, it's the person that's on the leftmost section of that mission. Now, it's very important when you look at these particular areas, these tell you only 1 die can be placed. So you can't, even if you have multiple purple die, it's still just 1 die that you can use. This carries the same type of effect when you go to these lands. These are called paths. These paths tell you how many die you can use and what type of die you can use when you go to those locations. Also, in these particular lands, you have a monster that's going to roll an X number of dice against you at the start of combat, and a land that he is protecting. Now, the trick here is the person that plays left on the furthest left spot gets the option of, or will have to fight the monster first. But that also means they could kill the monster before anyone else has the option or the ability to do that. Now, the cool thing, too, is if they don't kill that monster, the hit points will remain on him. The dice that they use will remain on that line, and then the next player in line has the option of trying to fight that monster again. You're going to keep going down the progression of these lines trying to kill this monster with the winning player getting the benefit. Now, the monster can be defeated or captured, but only captured if they have a trap in front of them that is showing a capture sign.
Right.
So you can't try to capture the monster otherwise. Capturing them usually gives you more glory and more money to be able to use. Killing them doesn't give you as much, but it will give you victory points, typically a trophy at the end of the game. Now, there's a lot of stuff that goes on in these battles that we could talk about if we so wish. There's, when you place in these locations, actually let me talk about that because it's super important to talk about how these are actually used. So if I wish to go in this area, the first thing you have to do is place one of your characters in that area. And then I have to look to see what I can physically place in that area. I can place 2 red die if I so wish. You're not rolling those die immediately. You're just setting them there. It's a worker placement spot. You're not going to resolve that until combat later in the round. Then you have the option to place more die if you so wish. And you can place traps, you can place shields, and a variety of other things to combat that monster. So I could lay a trap here, I could lay a trap here, and if I had shields available, I could lay them here as well.
Yeah, and when you're placing those things out there, like Jeremy said, the die aren't rolled at this point, but your opponents at the table can look at there and see what you've done in terms of what you might be able to pull off there. Like, so I know that Jeremy has 2 traps. I've seen the 2 traps that he picked up. They might be these traps. The dice, he has maybe 2 dice, and maybe I only have 1 dice in the lane that I'm going to go up. So it's going to help you determine whether or not you think, okay, might he beat the monster? If he's going to beat the monster, I may as well go elsewhere on my turn.
Yep.
Or maybe he won't, and maybe you have a trap that can kind of interfere with Jeremy's. And that's kind of the interesting thing about this player interaction in these lanes.
Yeah, each of these paths also give you mostly give you benefits. This path here will give you 4 coin to be able to use. This will allow you to reroll dice. There's all kinds of decisions on where you wish to place those things. Do I want to place later, hoping to capture the land, not worrying about the monster? Do I want to place earlier? Do I want to place multiple people in there so I can do both? Or do I want to place in the very beginning and then place in the second, just in case I'm not able to do it with my first and I've already occupied all the spots? There's a lot of decisions on how all you wish to deploy your mercenaries to these particular locations.
And the good news, too, is even if Jeremy defeated the monster and then I'm not able to, or even if I lost, there is some consolation prize in these locations in the Outer Lands.
Yeah, that's a great thing about this game. It's one of the things I want to talk about real quick, too, is that there's a lot of things that if you fail in this game, you still get something.
Yeah, it's not a complete failure.
Yeah, even if you die from the monster in this, you're still getting glory.
Yep.
I mean, your guy goes to Valhalla, you get glory. If you don't complete missions, you still get consolation prizes. If you're the last player in last place with the least reputation at the end of a round, you get to go first next round. So there's catch-up mechanisms. There's ways that you're still benefiting from failure with the dice rolls or other things that can happen within the game. The last thing you could possibly do, too, instead of going to these areas, you can also go to protect the Citadel. It works in the same way as this. The largest creature that doesn't get defeated, and we're not going to talk a whole lot about combat, but any creature that's not defeated will go down to the Citadel and attack the Citadel. If you don't protect the Citadel, it affects everybody at the table. If a creature gets through, you flip over the top token, and it will block one of these Citadel locations. And it'll keep blocking a location round after round until someone goes down there and handles that monster that's knocking on the Citadel's door.
Yeah, that one's a really interesting place because it's one of those things in a game like this where it's a very competitive game, but at the same time, we all kind of, someone has to deal with that.
Yeah.
And sooner or later, when you have 2 or 3 locations in your Citadel closed down, you really have no choice than to go and do something about it.
Yeah. The game will end in one of 2 different ways. If at any time a player gets to 30 glory on their track, that will signify the end of the game. Also, if after 6 rounds, then you're going to tally up the points.
Right.
The points are acquired from a variety of different ways. Any of the glory that you've collected through the game. Your glory is your victory points, plus your reputation, plus affinities that you've collected, and then you get victory points for some of the coin that you have left over as well. So, that's a lot to talk about, dude. And we didn't even get into a lot of the nitty-gritty portions of the game.
It is, and I'm sure you'll see on their Kickstarter that this is going to have a lot more information where you can really dig into it and learn all the ins and outs of the games. That we wanted to definitely give you this preview, an overview, if you will. Pretty thorough overview, I think.
One of the things I did want to say, too, is that if you're worried about dice rolling, which is one of my pet peeves in games, I don't typically like games where you're rolling dice and being held to whatever rules.
Yeah, you're just victim to the dice.
There is a lot of manipulation in this game. You can get manipulation from the mercenaries that you choose to go into combat. You can get die manipulation from the equipment pieces that you choose to equip them with. You get them from the lands that you conquer. You get a ton of them from the traps. So it's not just about die rolling. It's about playing smart. and about going to the right positions at the right time, and then using the Citadel to the best benefit, or to the best advantage that you can, using shields, using potions, trying to manipulate those odds in your favor through the course of the game. So bad rolls will happen, but there are a lot of ways to get around it in this game.
Well, plus it helps a lot too that a lot of these spaces, like you said earlier, you're not even rolling to go to these spaces.
Yeah.
So for a good portion of the game, a lot of your dice are really just going to be used for the color of the dice, not really the pips. That really just comes in to play in the battles and then with the persuasion die.
This is a very cool game. Beautiful, beautiful cover veneer on this thing. It looks great. The art in this is fantastic. A lot of choices, a lot meatier than you might initially think by looking at the game. If you guys have questions about it, make them in the comments below. Subscribe to us, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook. Go check out the Kickstarter. It should be up shortly. And we will catch you guys next time.
Bye-bye.
Season 2 of Man vs. Meeple is sponsored in part by Cool Stuff Inc. Cool stuff in stock at coolstuffinc.com.